The story of Joan of Arc, warrior, saint, and martyr. A teenage peasant girl with no military experience claimed to hear voices from God. At 17, she led armies to victory. At 19, she was burned at the stake, and centuries later, she became a saint. This is the extraordinary, heartbreaking story of Joan of Arc, the girl who saved a nation and became a legend. Joan was born around 1412 in the small village of Domremy, France. She was the daughter of simple farmers and grew up during one of the darkest periods of French history, the 100 Years' War between England and France. Joan could not read or write, but from a young age she was deeply religious, often praying for the salvation of France. At age 13, she claimed to begin hearing divine voices, which she identified as Saint Michael, Saint Catherine, and Saint Margaret. The voices told Joan that she had been chosen by God to save France from English occupation and ensure the Dauphin, Charles VII, would be crowned king. At just 16, she convinced local officials to escort her to Charles's court. Despite skepticism from nobles and clergy, Joan impressed the Dauphin with her determination, knowledge, and confidence. Charles allowed her to join the army, dressed in armor, cutting her hair short, and adopting men's clothing to protect herself from assault. In 1429, Joan led French forces to lift the siege of Orleans, a turning point in the 100 Years' War. Despite having no formal military training, her presence inspired the troops and revived French morale. Her military victories elevated her to almost mythical status among the people, who saw her as divinely guided. Within months, Charles VII was crowned king at Reims, just as Joan had promised. Despite her success, Joan's rising influence made her enemies both inside and outside France. In 1430, she was captured by Burgundian forces allied with the English. The French king, whom she had risked everything to crown, offered little help. Joan was sold to the English for trial. Joan was tried for heresy, witchcraft, and cross-dressing. The court was stacked against her, led by pro-English clergy determined to destroy her influence. Throughout the months-long trial, Joan held firm, answering complex theological questions despite her lack of education. She once famously said, "I am not afraid. I was born to do this." But in the end, she was convicted. On May 30th, 1431, at just 19 years old, Joan was led to the marketplace in Rouen. She was tied to a wooden stake and burned alive before a jeering crowd. Witnesses reported that even as the flames rose, she called out the name of Jesus until her final breath. Her ashes were scattered in the Seine River, but her story was just beginning. 25 years later, the Catholic Church reopened her case. The trial was declared invalid, and Joan was declared innocent. In 1920, nearly 500 years after her death, she was canonized as Saint Joan of Arc. Today, she stands as one of the patron saints of France. Joan's story has inspired countless books, films, operas, and works of art. Her courage, faith, and sacrifice remain symbols of patriotism and unshakable conviction, a reminder of how one young girl forever altered the fate of a nation. If you were inspired by the powerful story of Joan of Arc, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more untold stories from history.